snow behind some house that somehow this guy threw a Frisbee in the backyard and it landed there, went over there, and then they found this bench in the snow somehow. Completely random circumstance. And then they're like, what should we do? What should we do? And I said, well, go get it. And they said, are you going to come? And I said, I can't. I've got this test I've got to study for. Because I'm a nerd like that. So I'm studying for the test, freaking out about the grade that I'm getting in this class. And they're going out and they rescue the bench and then they go hide it. And I don't know where they found it. I don't know where they hid it. I'm the president who's completely ignorant. And there's a part of me that likes that. Because, there's less that can come back on me until the football players found out that the freshman class had the bench. Being the president, they started sending to me threats. Now, they had already duct taped me to a chair. I knew they were not above doing something that was either painful or embarrassing. And their threats began to weigh deeply into my soul. And I turned into a place of darkness. I was taking this class where I had to read the entire Brothers Karamazov book by Dostoevsky, which is just long. And I was in this art class that I wasn't really getting what the professor was really trying to accomplish, and I was just not figuring out what I needed to figure out. And I've got the football players sending me threatening letters in my mail, and I've got this pressure of trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do as the president, and it's going on for like 2 months. It might have only been a week, but it felt like 2 months. And eventually we come to Easter. And our school gets off for Easter, but I was in Chicago and I didn't have enough money to go back to California, so I was just going to be there in Chicago all by myself for the Easter holiday. And I remember leading up to Easter, I was praying and I was like, God, can't you lift this depression? And I was just doing the right things that I knew to do. I was studying as hard as I ever studied, and I was trying to respond to the president thing as well as I could. And I was trying to maintain good relationships with my friends as much as I could. And I was trying to go to church as much as I could. And I was trying to spend the time in God's Word as much as I could. And I was praying as much as I could. And I remember just feeling so depressed and sad that on Good Friday, I said, this is the one day out of the year where I can feel as bad as humanly possible, because it's even though it's Good Friday, it's the day Jesus died. And so what I decided was on Thursday night, I was going to reenact the 24 hours personally of what the disciples must have gone through when Jesus went to the cross. And so what I did is I set my alarm and I woke up every 3 hours to read the passage where Jesus says, couldn't you stay awake? And he says to his disciples, couldn't you even pray with me in the garden? And so I spent the whole night. I slept for like 2 hours at a time, and then I had to wake up and I'd read that passage and I'd spend some time in prayer until I fell asleep again. And then the next day I was fasting all day. I wasn't eating anything because, I was supposed to be in mourning. And I went through the whole thing thinking that somehow during that day God would reveal himself to me. And at the end of the day, Saturday started just like Friday did. And then Sunday came, and it's this great day of Jesus' resurrection, and I went to church, and I was invited to someone's house for lunch, and so I went over there, and I had their Easter dinner with them, and then I came back to my dorm room Sunday night, and it was the same as it was on Thursday night. Nothing was different. And it happened like that. I don't even remember how much longer, but there was one day where it was at nighttime, my roommates were all gone, I was studying, and I lived in a dorm where there was a girls' floor and a guys' floor, and the guys couldn't go on the girls' floor except for special times. And this was one of those times. The girls' floor was open, and so some friends of mine over there called me up and said, hey, we see your light is on. Come on over here. We're going to hang out a little bit. And I was like, no, I'm not feeling good. And apparently they must have seen my attitude over the last month or so. And I went over there anyway because they badgered me. I went over there anyway, and when I walked in, they had a banner across the ceiling, something like "Feel Better." And they had bright lights all around the room, and there was confetti laying all around the places, and there was a table in the middle of their room that was covered with blank pieces of white paper and finger paints. And I said, what is this? And they said, we're going to finger paint because we want to cheer you up. And I was like, what? And so we sat down, and for about an hour and a half, we finger painted, and they played music. And then after we finger painted for a while, they pulled out these notes that they had written to me just to encourage me. And they said, and so they read them to me. And I was like, what is this? I mean, talk about something completely stupid. The football team was threatening to shave my head. Why would that cause such depth of depression? There was something spiritual going on in my soul. And then these two people, these two girls in this room just decided they wanted to bless me. And they just wanted to cheer me up. And they did that. And I carried that finger-painted picture and theirs with me for the rest of my college career. And it totally turned everything around right then. And there are moments in our lives when we get to that place of darkness and despair where we just need someone else to be there, to shine a little ray of hope into us. And that's what we find in the story of Naomi and Ruth. So go there with me. It's on page 182 in the Bibles that we pass out. It's Ruth becomes that ray of light for Naomi. Take a look at chapter 1, verse 1. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. And right there, you should already recognize something's wrong with this picture. It's the days of the judges. And if there's a famine in the land, that's because the people of Israel have not been following God's will, because God had said to them way back in Deuteronomy, the book before Judges, before Joshua, and then before Judges. In Deuteronomy, God said, if you follow me, I will bless you, and you will never have want, and you will never have need. And so if there's a famine in the land, it means that the people of Israel were not following God. It means that God's judgment was on them in some fashion, and that these people were actually facing hardship that was caused by God. Famine in the land. So a man leaves, and he takes his wife and his sons, and they live in the country of Moab, which is the wrong place for them to live. I don't know about Naomi's relationship with her husband or her relationship with God, but if she wanted to follow God, she would know the right place for us to be is here in Bethlehem, our hometown in Israel, the land God gave to us. And the right thing for us to be doing is to be praying and turning to God. But they're running away and they're going to a foreign land so they can find some food. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem. That just means that's the family tribe they were from, Ephrath. And they're from Bethlehem, the town in Judah. And they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. If you mark up your Bible, underline the phrase, she was left. She was left. The man who brought her to the wrong country has now died, and she's left there. She's left, but she has her 2 sons. Keep going. They married Moabite women. That was wrong. They're not supposed to marry non-Israelite women. That's part of God's law there. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. These women are the wrong women. After they'd lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion, the sons, also died. And Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. There's a depth of sadness in those words that I don't think we can really relate to unless maybe you've walked that path and experienced that kind of loss. First we leave our home, then I lose my husband, then my sons marry the wrong girls, then they die, now I'm stuck with them in the wrong place, and she's left without her sons and without her husband. There's a darkness in her soul at that moment in time. And here's the thing. In places like that, we tend to ask this question. Does God really care? Why me? Why now? Why this? Why am I going through this particular situation? And see, from the outside, we might look at it and say, well, there's nothing really bad that happened. I mean, people die. That's the way life goes. So what if your husband dies? Yes, that happens, I know. Mourn it, but don't feel all tragic about it. Your sons have died. Yes, mourn it. Experience the loss, but don't feel all tragic about it. Yes, you're living in the wrong place. Just do the right thing. Come on back. Whatever it is, from the outside, we can be looking at Naomi or someone like that and be kind of judgmental and be like, just get over it. But from her side, It's like one thing after another, after another, after another. And it just keeps hurting a little bit more until finally she's at that place where there's too much pain. And she's left without her husband. And the worst part about it all is that if she knows the story of Abraham and Moses and Joshua, that doesn't help her at all. Because see, that's their milestones. It's not her milestone. I mean, you've read the Bible too, and you've seen these great stories in there, and you're like, but that's for them. I haven't experienced that. Let's keep reading because there is a ray of hope that shows up. Beginning in verse 6. When Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. She finds out God is blessing other people. Maybe if I go to those other people, God will bless me too. Maybe if I'm there, God will bless me too. God is blessing them. Maybe, just maybe, I could show up and cash in a little bit on this. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she'd been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you've shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." Now, she knows that God is blessing other people, but at the same time as she's going back to the other people to maybe get some blessing from God's blessing on the other people, she's also rejecting the people who are with her. She's kicking them away. She's saying, "Go away from me." They say, "No, we're going to stay with you." Keep going. But Naomi said, verse 11, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters." Second time. "I'm too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it's more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." They're trying to offer blessing. They're saying, "No, we're going to come with you." And she says, "No, I'm bitter. I can't receive your blessing because God is against me." And then keep going a little further. At this, they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." Once again. But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you.